Hey guys, the main target I have in mind with this video is to present you with a time efficient yet elegant way to get the pilot looking good enough for the job required. He needs to look decent and believable in the cockpit. That's it. The pilot alone will not sell this project. This one is more about being efficient, and it's something you can rely on in your busy life to get the pilot looking reasonable and presentable. The main technique strategy I'll be using this time will be shading. And yes, it's solid. Many artists over time have simply shaded figures to allow for the highlights to then remain. Adding both is of course cool, but may also be overworking the subject, and this is something we really need to be wary of. I'm not kidding, overwork is a real and present danger in our modern society, and it's presented to us as the new normal at every opportunity. Let's keep this a work of joy and fun. A beautiful and cool finished camel is my goal. The figure is maybe, like 5% of that finish? As Sensei would often chide me, hit 80% Link and move on to the next fun project. Let's keep on target there and make sure that we're doing fun projects. I want this video to also be a companion as you work. So it's quite long form. It's something for you to listen to as you spend time at the bench. So it's partly done in real time to give you the feeling of us working together, as well as a voiceover to help add commentary in review. Let's begin. A couple of cups with genuine Australian tap water. Yeah, I mean, Spanish tap water is famous, but dude, Australian tap water, mate, can't get any better. I've got the figure primed and highlighted up. Yep, I've done the old zenithal trick just to kind of have a bit of a look to see where the sunlight's not going to help me there. See where the highlights might fit in best. Okay, cruising along. Let's work on the pilot face and skull cap. Now, to facilitate this, you can probably see that the pilot's looking a different direction now. I've modded this so that I can fit it with the pose and putting it inside the cockpit, and it's simply with 1mm brass. So I'll place this back on the holder, so don't freak out if you see changes. It's all done with some sense of purpose, and that purpose is of course just making it easy for me to work on. Okay, with another offcut there of that 1mm brass, simply placing the loose head. Okay, now I'm going to freak out. No, the head, we'll just put it there, and I'll lay some base colors on him. First of all would be the, I think it's about time I pretended and grew up and used a big person brush, isn't it? So we'll break out the brush that Andy gave me. Now, for those of you who don't know, poor Andy died this year, and struck many of us quite hard. I mean, just me personally, I was in touch with Andy a great deal, and lovely bloke, really helpful for the community. That Mark 44 book I've got out, he proofread that for us, so really miss the guy. Wish him all the best. On to the next. Thanks, Andy. Going back to the same ash grey, I'm going to carefully layer that along the sides first. Now, I'm kind of breaking my little rule, aren't I? Well, it's not my rule, it's one of the laws of painting, and that we should be going from the outside, the inside out. Come on, Link, get it right. What do you know of the laws of painting? And, well, this is far too sharp and not holding enough paint for me. It's Andy's fault. That was a little private joke we had, many of us in the community. So if you see that, that's what we're referring to. You may not see it much anymore though. You know how it is. So, ash grey. Let's pretend I did a good job here, and I'll probably come back. I'll need to load the paint, maybe thin it a little bit more to do the other sides. So when I come back and it's all really nice and good, I've just done all of it very well. I have to admit one thing, that I was super happy to see that the sculpt has the I mean, it's got to be more than 3, hasn't it? It's a multi-part hood that goes under the helmets. And I was most happy to see this because I've always wanted to have a chance to paint up a, I'm running out of paint, paint up a, one of those NASA style, I believe they called them Super Snoopy helmets. And this is finally my chance. And I approached it with not enough paint. Okay, let's flick over to the flesh color and get that base in. Okay, for the basic skin tone, the figure is it's one of these things that I find uncomfortable now to even make mention of, but the figure has a reasonably sharp bone structure. So could be Persian, Caucasian, quite a few kind of versions, I guess, types, races that we could fit in there. Due to my lack of skill, I'm going to stay pretty neutral and go with this this red beige. And I mean, we can augment it, I believe, just going by eye. With both black and white paints to pastel it up and down to get different complexions. Okay, so I could have this a little bit closer to the camera, but what I'm doing is, the good thing about one of these nifty little holders is that I can rest this on the table. It does make for a ever so slightly more stable hold point that I think should work out to be able to give you a bit better view, okay? My paint mix here is reasonably thin. I think I'm shooting as in brushing, about dead on 50-50. As these paints sit longer with me not touching them, the ones that I reactivate, I am feeling partial. I'm going to go out there and say that I'm liking the Acrylicos Vallejo paints again. You know, the old classics, the old standards. I think I've given the new stuff, the 3rd generation paints, you know, plenty of love, plenty of time on the brush. I mean, they're not bad, nothing wrong, but definitely I just don't think any better either. More hype? Yes. But, no, this is just how old are these paints now? Acrylicos Vallejo. Like, plenty, right? So, plenty old. I mean, I've been using them as long as I remember painting stuff. So, you know, I'm not super old, but it is going back some years. But I found that was a lot of my other paints. I got asked the other day, the wonderful folks in Discord, the Paint on Plastic Discord, hey guys, hey, what happened to that paint range that you had mentioned? I said, oh yeah, that's another thing that just got forgotten by potential partners. And, well, just not mentioned again. I guarantee you they haven't forgotten it. They just forgot to mention it again. Declined to make mention of empty promises gone unfulfilled. Just for something different. But is it because I'm an old dude that I then use my old paints? Or is it just because the old paints have nothing wrong with them at all? I remember when I came back to starting to do figure painting again, I reached out to one of my friends, Ben Kometz, over in Germany. Brilliant guy. fantastic painter. And I said, Ben, are there any new developments in paints? And he just said, come on, Link, you know how it is. The paints haven't really changed much. This is going back like ages ago. This would be 5-6 years ago. He said, and to be honest, I probably just used the same set of paints on most projects too, and then kind of fine-tune it. So there we go. I hope that's a sheen and not a miss spot. Trying to look at it both through the camera and through my eyes. My lion eyes. But no, I think there's just some reflections coming through there. So we'll let that dry off. So that's very basic. One slosh of red beige, boom. And we've got a bit of a base down there. And what I'll do next is I'll do the other grey, and then I'll finish up with the last color. That's going to be the base here. Okay, now last color to bring a couple of the details together will be the one that I've put in just down here, and it's off-white, third gen. And I'll be painting it carefully into the white bit on the cap. So already that's looking quite spacey-doody, isn't it? So I'm gonna jump in, a little bit of water on the brush. Take out a little bit. Now, this is one place where I found these third gen paints to actually, they are superior, is in the whites. Pure white, off-white, ivory. I think they are better. Slightly. I mean, dude, it's like really, really slightly. So we don't need a lot of, I went with the white primer here, so I'm just going to clean up and get the edges here a little thicker and keep it matching up with the grey in terms of how thick it appears, and to make sure that it looks like a fabric being flat, I think will lend a lot of validity and believability to this little Snoopy skull cap. How many times do I get away with saying that? You can tell I'm loving it, right? I only just learned that a few minutes ago. It's not like I'm a lifelong... I've always liked this look, but I didn't know what it was called. And then you go online, and the interwebs knows all. It's such a beautiful name too, isn't it? I wonder if that's why NASA takes you to the website, right? And they got a bunch of merch. NASA slinging that merch, right? Which I thought was really nifty. And they do have a bunch of Snoopy products up. Is there a match? I don't know. Maybe somebody can tell me. That would be cool. Yeah, I wanted... You know how cloth things, and especially white, should have a great deal of variance? So once I show you the next step too, it should make a bit of sense as well. But we don't want it too perfectly white. I want it to look like it's been used. There we go, looking pretty good. I'm going to put that same white here in the power of odds. I'm going to have, that was another bit of a error here. I'm going to back wipe that off. Oh, cool. Well done, Link. Crisis averted. Nice. I like working with, I like crossing back between the different mediums because, you know, water and water-based acrylics, gosh, it's nice, isn't it? So I'm going to layer in these ones. And keep this white across a couple of spots in the model, and like I was saying with the numbers, so 1 spot, 3 spots, 5 spots. I think 5 will be a good number here because it will help lead the eye around. What I'm going to do is, I want these to look like little air gauges. Hopefully it looks cool. It's like those tests, man, you never know. So those bits, the helmet bit, and then these crepe. Remember I was babbling about how I thought they might be crepe soles? I need more water here. There we go. Okay, nice. I need a bit more white here. because it's a little grey there, a little grey due to the undercoat. So nice, that'll be about right. Just enough to, yeah, bring it into matching up with the other pieces of white, and show off where I didn't paint the grey there. Now, wet palette, don't fail me now. Can I show? I actually discovered little bits like this, and I did. There's a few around there that I haven't gotten on the first couple of runs through. I simply reload the brush, drop in that line with the nice sharp brush this time, and kaboom, we're done. That's the best thing with the wet palette, is having all of your paints open, wet and ready to go. Okay, base colors done. And it looks all right. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm happy with how the colors work. I mean, it's nice and simple, reasonable harmony. A shame the green and a couple of those other colors didn't quite turn out, but that's okay. I want it to look, the most important thing is that it looks good together with the camel. And up next, shading. And this will be a pretty fun step and reasonably quick too. Now for the face, the figure, I'm going to change up and go with burnt umber for a slightly more lifelike and human sort of color shade. Okay, now here's a thin application of that color. It's, at first I thought it might be a little thin, but actually it's sitting pretty well. So it's just a touch more water, and it's sitting into the eye sockets well, around mouth there, cheeks, nose. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I'll let this sit with gravity. You know what I mean, like sit it up like that. No, I don't have any other choice. I don't have an anti-gravity chamber as yet. But, and we'll sit it up and let it dry on there carefully. We can go back and touch it up a little bit. And if we really hate it, it's not that much to strip and redo, is it? But actually, I think that looks pretty good already. Hey there, friends. Link back at the bench. And now let's move along with the advanced portion of painting our little figure. I'll be starting off with the face. And I thought it's probably smarter to use my little what reservoir I have for steady hands first thing here in the morning. Now it's Saturday here, the family are all home, the weather outside is pretty good, so there may be quite a bit of background noise as people move about, etc. And apologies in advance for that. Now when I say advanced, I still want to keep very much in mind the end purpose, which is to have this figure looking realistic inside the cockpit. So please don't expect this to be full figure type painting style, because you know it still needs to be reasonably abbreviated. I've put out a paint palette for you. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on was the concept of the color zones. Now, if you just type in face color zones, you'll get loads and loads of really nifty like both articles and diagrams and what have you. But it's a very, very simple concept. The human face, generally speaking, and maybe some aliens too, we don't know yet, has 3 zones. There's the upper, the middle, and the lower. The upper zone tends to have less blood flow. So on a Caucasian figure like this, will tend to look a little bit more, you know, skin color or even yellowish. Then the mid zone is where the blood flow is come on, speak clearly, Lincoln. Where the blood flow is higher and will be a little bit more reddish, and that is especially pronounced on cheeks, lips, edges of nose, that kind of thing. And then beard. Beard, generally speaking, will have a blue-grey tone. So really nice and simple. I've arranged my colors for you to try to help with that. Plus, you know, hey, I got an experiment just for something new. So I've arranged my colors in the color zones as well. I find this more helpful. When those diagrams that we talk about online, they go, yeah, this is the yellow one, this is the reddish one. I'm like, yes, but I want to know what paint colors would respond well to that. So I've chosen some here for you. The red beige is what we used before. And to show you that one, if you'd like to get it for your collection, that is exactly this one. I'm sure other brands have versions of it as well. I've put the red beige centrally so you can see that we can move up and down our gradient line from it. Next, I'd say adjacent to this one, the most closest one that we could combine would be red, and that is also just pure red from Vallejo paints. Now there's a bunch of different reds on the market. I got this one because it's dead center of other competing ranges that I could see. It's almost like a cool red, and it seems very practical, good to use. Now moving back up on the face, but we can still intermix these to make the transition smoother. I've got a slightly yellowish tone and then pure white. The pure white, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Ville? Bill was asking me, am I going to use this stuff? And yes, I am. Now, it's just another water-based acrylic paint, but it's one of those heavy body ones. And I find that the lighter colors smooth and make better transitions than normal hobby paints because of that heavy body. They, what's the word I'm looking for? They extend very well. They stretch very well because they're not made for opacity and for beginners to get quick wins on the brush, if that makes sense. So it's very much an artist application. I find these are really good. I haven't bothered with too many other colors. The white one here from Schminke or another heavy body acrylic will suit your purpose as well. So that's that one. And I stumbled across this in the range that the AK folks sent to me back when they loved me. They sent me a bunch of their products when I agreed to the project to work on the book for them. This one's called Luminous Flesh, and as you'll see, it's got yellow in it compared to red beige. It's definitely gone yellow. Now there's another one that I quite like the look of and have used many times. It's Vallejo's Sunny Skin Tone. Now that could be comparative. If you already have that one and you add white to it, I think you would get this color. Now I'm using this because I just happen to have it. Don't run out and buy it if you don't have it. You could simply add a little bit of the white and a little bit of yellow and you could make this color. But hey, I've got it, I want to try it out. Now lastly, moving down the face, let's give this guy some 5 o'clock shadow and stubble. And I've simply kept the same grade that I've been using across other sections of the model. This one, ash gray from this AK range. Now for the Vallejo colors, I have used London grey a bunch of times in the past, and gosh, one of the ranges has a grey called basalt grey, which I quite like the look of. I think basalt grey and London grey are pretty equivalent. It's a reasonably neutral mid-range dark grey colour. Now mid-range and dark grey, does that make sense? Well, yes it does, Link. See, mid-range greys, I don't really use much, either the light ones or the dark ones. So this is what I would consider a dark one. Anything past that 50% black-white, I think is on the dark side. And they're very easy to lighten. We can simply add the old Schminke white. Now imagine if I pointed to that and referenced it at the same time. It would make a lot more sense, wouldn't it? Now one of the things I want to be very upfront about this with is that this is a total cheat. We're skipping the depth and shading effects because we've done it with that gunky wash thing that I applied for figure painting. So let's make some tones of our base colors by starting from the middle. So we've got our red beige, and I'm going to take this off to the side a little bit. And I like to keep them, positioned so that I can remember what they are. I'll add a little bit of the straight red to it to make that tone, and then highlight it with white. And this gives us the ability to then skew our color in any of those three directions easily by simply adding more of one of them. That's a nifty thing to keep in mind. Anytime you want to change your colors, add a couple more to them to make a kind of trifecta of colors, a three-way color, and then you can skew it in any one of those directions. This helps out, makes it nice and simple, because just adding white to it will highlight it. Now, I probably didn't make quite enough there, but it's not too bad. It's not a big face, right? So let's keep this in this central zone here. I've started off with the cheeks, as you can see, and the color, the paint is nice and thin. It's probably about 20 paint to 80 water, and you can see that it's lightly highlighting. Now, for those of you, I know there's a bunch of you who are actually much better at painting faces than me, and super kudos to you for putting in the effort. You can see here, though, in its application that it's allowing the shaded aspects to come through. And like I said, it's totally cheating, but that's okay. We don't actually get, unless we show everybody all of our steps, we don't actually get any of those little brownie points if we do it completely from scratch, as opposed to painting over a cheat like this. We just save time in our life. And as Yokoyama-san would always chide me, he'd say, Link, get it done as quickly as possible. Don't worry about the things you can't see. In fact, the finish is all that counts. Don't worry about what you don't show folks. I guess he didn't know I was going to do videos in the future. But it's the finish that counts. Get it done quickly and move on to fun things in your life, like making more models or spending time with your family. He's quite wise in that regard. He's not one of these guys under a waterfall suffering the cold water for his art. He's about getting it done. And I know there's a bunch of professional folks here in the audience as well. And you guys know that with your day job, that you can't mess about. Here I've made important effort to make sure the lips were real well coated, because they will need a little bit more blood flow / adding more red, as well as, come on Link, more red. You can do it, more red. Yes, I'm doing this as a voiceover after, because I knew I'd be really focusing. I wanted to have it as high quality as I could for you guys, so I'm recording this afterwards to make sure it's very clear what I'm doing. So with more red added, I can go into those slightly higher blood zone areas, which would be around the nose and around the lips. Now, here's something I want to try on this one, and for more for the future, is I've noticed a new friend who I quite admire his figure painting. He had stippled in, quite clearly, additional red around the parts of your nostrils that might flare if you were one to do that. And with the stipple between the red mixture and then with his skin color highlights, gosh, it looked realistic. And I just thought, this is something I want to beg, borrow, steal. So this is my first attempt at trying to do that, and it's something we will do again together. Here, the lips. Now, I was always a little bit surprised how the lips do need to be a little bit more redder than you might imagine them to be, but it does really help. A couple more touches to the cheeks there to bring a little bit more blood flow looking into them. They are looking a little bit off there, because the red beige with the burnt umber mix gave it quite the shadow underneath. So that one was a really good call. There's another one you might want to use for that too. Just by the way, the one from Games Workshop that is often used for flesh wash mixes. It's called Flesh Wash. That one mixed with the matte medium actually does work very well. However, I know it's been upgraded. They put more additives to it, so I'm not sure it'll work as well. Okay, moving up the face, let's get into that yellow zone area. So I've added the red beige, a little bit of white, and a little bit of that luminous flesh to make another trifecta of color, so that it can be augmented if needed. And I'm going to stay with that up here on the forehead. Now, the burnt umber wash very nicely pointed out a couple of wrinkles and details on the forehead. So I'll admit to it being a little bit of a cheat. I'm painting around them, leaving them with this size 1 Winsor, and just trying to highlight where I feel I don't need to paint. Now, is that proper painting? I feel it is, because like that little side story before, I feel that we're moving more towards the goal of having Camel Pilot look decent in the cockpit and skip a bunch of steps that I don't always feel a lot of joy with. That's why, I had a bit of a conversation with my wife while I was doing this, and I said, should I show the cheat or should I try to do it properly? She asked, which do you enjoy? And in plain honesty, I'm not sure I like painting figures. It's kind of one of those things that I like how the result is. I like how it ends up. I think they can add a lot of life and scale and what have you. But do I enjoy it? I don't know. I'm still not decided. I probably need to get better. If I can improve my skill, I'll probably like it a little bit more. Now back to actual technique here. Now the size 1, whilst wet and shaped, is very, very pointy. It may look like it's a little bit too big a brush for this, but no, I think it's more than fine if we're carefully using the point. So this figure, it's good enough. It has enough 3D detail for the brush to catch. So I've highlighted up some aspects of the nose, around the eye socket itself, the eyelid. It's all pretty good, and enough to catch a little bit of the detail there. I've also used this lighter mix to paint in the eyeball. This is so camera work here by the lovely Tomware, and she's volunteered to help me out here to try to capture this in time whilst in motion. So that was enough of the yellow zone. Now let's move into the lower third of the face, the grey zone, and I've attempted to mix up a color there, so it's the red beige with the ash grey to look like the color that a 5 o'clock shadow, some stubble poking through the fleshy tones may look. In hindsight, and to just share that with you now whilst we've just seen it, I feel it was probably a little too grey. Grey is very overpowering, much like red. To the yellow, not so much actually. Usually yellow on other things can look very powerful, but on this one, I probably needed a little bit less grey. And I did fix that. First we'll see how it goes on. I'm just staying in the jaw line there. I gave him a reasonably perfect beard line. Due to my intermediate, mediocre skill here, I feel that I'm very useful for beginners and other intermediates because so many cheats to help us look a little bit more proficient. If you paint in the line nice and cleanly, it's much easier for the eye and the mind to understand what it is. He's not dirty, he just hasn't shaved. If you get lucky, he might also look dirty, but no. So I've tried to blue his chin, and that sounds like something Tobias Fimke would say, doesn't it? Hands up if you know that reference. Gosh, I love that show. But anyway, Tobias here. Shall we go with his name now? His name is now Tobias Fimke. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use that. It might be copyrighted, but certainly we should be able to call him Tobias. That might be a great name for his first name, right? Whilst it went on wet here, the greyed beard, it goes on okay. And instead of brush stroking it, except for the places where I really need a straight line, I've tried to go with stipple. I probably should have backed off earlier and not put as much paint on, but that's why I need, and I suggest you do too, we should be painting together a bunch of figures at once so that we can figure out the best way whilst we kind of bounce between them. Yokoyama-san tells me to always do that. He always has like 3 or 4 of the same figure ready to paint and then chooses the best one. I mean, that's easy for him to do. You know, I'm buying these kits myself now. I don't have 4 Camel pilots. I just got the one. So I did not have that that advantage this time. But I will on some other projects shortly. I'll show you. Here, see how the grade's a little homogeneous here? So even with my stippling and faffing about, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh. It looks all right. It looks cartoony, maybe. Could give it that. What I did do, though, to improve it further was then the basic skin tone, the one mixed with white. I did stipple in a little bit more in between to make it a little rougher looking, a little bit patchy. To be super economical and work with a lovely limited palette so that it's not too confusing, draws the eye away. We don't want him to be too much of a focal point, so he's got to stay nice and jimmy. Jimmy is the word for plain and ordinary in Japanese that you might like to use. So I've used beard color to come in for eye color, pupil color. And I've kept the whites of the eyes are not very white at all. I think that's one to be really careful of, because we don't want to give him the old Google eyes. Do we pronounce it Google? Google eye, googly eyes. You know what I mean? If the eyes are too white, it seems to frame the pupils way too much. And then when we paint them in, there's just no way to make them look natural. And it must be something to do with a bit of a scale effect there. So I've carefully, and probably not very well, and probably way too quickly, painted in the pupils here using that same grey. I know, like I got this cartoony notion in my eye that, well, the eyes should be blue. But who really has blue eyes? I mean, I don't. I have grey eyes, according to my lovely wife. So she was surprised at that, because, you know, that's something that's not really found in places like Japan. So in adding the grey beard, I've stayed with the grey eye and very carefully dotted it in, whilst, see, it looks okay. Whilst being careful to not, I've got a bit of a habit, maybe the way I look at it is a bit off, but I've got to be very careful of not going cross-eyed with my figures. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but people will spot it, because, you know, we're so used to looking at other human faces. So I've kept him looking slightly to his left, because, again, with placing pilots into vehicles, turn the neck, turn the eyes, just gives them that slight bump of life. And you know, we want that. Anything to break away from the reality of what we're doing is, it's a little hunk of plastic or resin if we're lucky, and trying to make it lifelike enough that it tricks our brain into believing that it's looking at a facsimile of a little human. That actually came out really well. I felt this eye in particular, after trying to mess around, after trying to get a pupil in there, you'll notice that you've not painted some sections big enough with the whites of the eyes. Be super careful here, because we've used the cheat of shading. If you get the white outside the lines, boom, you've instantly ruined that cheating step that you've done. You've lost the time saving of it. So I was very careful and pedantic here to be, you know, very neat. And in using that color as well, I found that I was able to highlight the eyelids and some of the prominent details there. So ultimate discipline and control here to practice being neat. Now, it's cool if you do go out and you go outside the lines and you have to redo it. It's all good. Most likely that mix, the burnt umber mix, will still be wet on your palette, and you could reuse it, or taking one of the nuds from my old tutorials. I've not shown it here because I didn't need to use it, but one color that's nice to pick up would be Armor Brown in the Vallejo Air range. Sounds strange, but what it really is it's a beautiful, almost straight burnt umber color. And because it's got that nifty airbrush thinner mixed into it, it's a lovely wash paint as well. So that's one to maybe keep on hand or pick up next time you're in a hobby store, for example. Okay, after redoing the white section there, the whites of his eye, I've attempted again, and this is so scary, man. I got everything's clenched up. That's why I'm not talking during this, to get that grey eye in there and have it at least match up somewhat to the other side and keep it reasonably round. Now, again, in hindsight, I've been studying. I really am interested. I studied a bunch of figures after this. Maybe I should have done it before, but no, I did it after because I am diligent about learning. And what I've seen, some of my friends whose work I really like, they have a bunch of the colored part of the pupil. They put that up under the eyelid. Now, maybe that's what happens in real life, and I just need to pay more attention to other humans. But I've seen that, and some of the ones that I thought were really good have a half semicircle touching the upper eyelid, and I felt that they looked reasonable, and so I've tried a little bit of that. With my eyebrows here, I feel the grey color was way too dark. I produced a Eugene Levy. Is it Levy or Levi? But you know, Eugene Levy from Schitt's Creek. Gosh, that guy's funny. I love him as an actor. I also appear to love his eyebrows too. So I painted them on way too thick here. I didn't add enough water. It wasn't actually difficult to remedy. I then mixed more basic skin color into it. The red beige plus white into the grey and softened it a little bit. But you can see there, it actually does, it looks way better in the video than I thought it did when I was doing it myself. So he's looking all right. There's a funny expression in Japanese that they use for detectives and what have you. They call them hard-boiled. Hard-boiled. Obviously it comes from English, but the hard-boiled dudes always had that kind of samurai look with the really perfect, thick, hirsute eyebrows. And I feel Tobias here has got that kind of look going on, hasn't he? We've reached the stage here where I'm reworking the figure slightly, but you'll notice, especially for those of you who are really, really top-notch, you'll notice that I'm not going to the stage of washing or very, very thin coats to bring the transitions closer together. I don't feel it was necessary on this figure to go that deep. So what I'm doing here is, despite having said that, I have a slightly thinner version of the basic skin tone, and I'm basically retouching that to a few places on the figure to help it look a little softer overall. Gosh, I hope I didn't contradict myself, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. I know my friends who are super good, and I've seen some videos by them, they will do light transitions by smoothing the surface over with an ultra translucent level of paint. But for this guy and for the roughness that I wanted, I don't think we needed to go that far. I want him to look reasonably like rough and ready. There's a certain look that I highly admire as well, but it's almost cartoonish like in its beauty that some of the figures have. And you know, they're dudes, they're in wartime, and they're beautiful. You know, they look nicer and more translucent than humans ever do in any other time of their lives or existence. So one of the things about Maschinen Krieger to me is that it's got to be gritty, it's got to be grimy, and it's got to be ultra realistic. I just like that look. Or cartoony can also work for it as well. And I've got some friends, and I'll share that content with you for the ones that I think really nail that look. But for this little dude, and you can see him there, he's starting to come together, starting to look reasonably human-like, despite the relatively few steps that we've done here together. So just that, the translucent, look at that for a close-up. Tomoe just nailed that shot, didn't she? There it is. So this one, the red beige, I think I was running out there. I wanted an even more, not nondescript, but a very plain sort of color to just kind of camouflage some of the previous work. Gosh, I'm not sure that's the right way to say it, but so for example, we did capture this. So because I'm not filming, I didn't know the stipple. So you could see it's that original, just straight red beige, stippled into the beard, so that it doesn't look like a water slide beard, right? I knew it could be a reasonably that red beige color, skinnish tone there, so a bit more onto the straight part of the chin, so that it highlights it ever so slightly, and just stippled into places to break it up. If those of you who have or can grow beards, and you still have color, I don't now. I grow Santa, straight Santa. So I remember it kind of looking like this. Or at least I knew the figure needed a little bit more. I've got that thing in my mind thinking, I can't go too many steps. You're going to call me out on it. So this was kind of like the last one. This faffing about with just re-stippling in a bit of the red beige to get the right congruence of level of detail to help it look right. I was really walking the tightrope here because I know we've got to keep him, keep this rough, keep this smooth, fast for you, so that it's a good kind of, almost, I'd like to call it a speed paint, to get it ready and just good enough to sit inside that cockpit and look right. And overall, I'm about 90% on my own work here in achieving that goal. Not how great the face looks. I think it looks, it's good enough. But getting him right to be able to sit in the cockpit, I think I'm about at least 90, maybe even 95% for true to purpose and target. And there we go. I think we're about done here. So here is about where I should have backed off. I can feel it now. So long as it sells the idea, we can put it on, make it feel good. We're done here, Link. Let's move along. But nice work, right? Sorry to go a little bit long with the voiceover. I just thought we could appreciate this moment together. Now, if you want to go harder on this, please do, and please share with me. I'd love to see some tips from other folks too and improve my figure game as well. Whoops, I found one more section that I wanted to share with you because I think it's a reasonably important thing to keep straight. On closer inspection, I did notice that the glint in the eye, because I figure he's slightly got a head down and it should be a little bit of external light coming in there through the cockpit. I had quite a bit more reflection in his left eye than his right eye did, and it gave it a strange sort of effect, almost as if his right side of his face was more in shadow than his left, which it could work, but I was a bit nervous about leaving it like that because, I don't want to stick him all the way back there in the cockpit there because, my goodness, that would be a tough one to try to fix up. So, I've just carefully loaded up that Schminke white to a point. I've thinned it a little bit, but I wanted it reasonably thick to be translucent. I don't have multiple passes in my hands available for this kind of thing, so I want to stick the glint and back off. And that's what I've done here. So, I don't know, maybe there might be a little bit of over glintiness in his eyes. He's got that certain look, feeling, and sparkle in his eyes, hasn't he? But that's what that's from. They're a little bit disparate, and I wanted to bring them back to parity and hopefully not be too far off. It's those things where we can get a bit far from center that can look a little fake to us and kind of throws the whole illusion off. That's what I was going for here. And I think I've done a pretty good job on that too. I hope you like it. Thank you very much for watching and working through with me. Hope you enjoyed it and that some of it resonates with you, both now and again later. Next up, I'll be doing the cockpit workup and paint, and we'll do the figure weathering I mentioned together there and combining them for efficiency. Thanks always, and more soon.